الرجل لا يدرك بحسن خلقه درجات قائم الليل صائم النهار. A person will achieve through his good manners the status of the one who stands all night and fasts all day. So these are just a few, and we mentioned one more hadith, another hadith of Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu. The Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, أكمل المؤمنين إيمانا أحسنهم خلقا وخيارهم خيارهم لنسائهم. He said the most complete of the believers in Iman are the ones who have the best manners, and the best of them are the ones who are best to their women folk. So these are just a few of the ahadith which talk about the virtue of having good manners. The thing is that with good manners, there's a couple of points that we should make before we start. The first point we should make is that we shouldn't limit good manners to our relationship between us and other people. Even our relationship with Allah is governed by good manners. The Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ صَالِحَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. It's the wording of Imam Ahmad in his Musnad. Al-Tabarani, he narrated the same hadith with the wording, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. I have only been sent to complete good manners. The manners that are intended here is a word that is comprehensive for every way that you deal with anything, including the way you deal with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the first thing is we shouldn't limit it to just being a nice person to my neighbor, or I'm good to my friends, or I'm a nice person to work with. But we should also have a more broad understanding of akhlaq to include our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the way we approach that. The second thing that we should mention is that akhlaq generally can be divided into two things or two types. Things which are in your nature, and we're all different in that, but things that you are naturally inclined towards and things you have to work hard on. So from the things that you might be naturally inclined towards, one of us is a naturally gentle person. One of us is naturally generous. What I mean by naturally generous is that a person, it's not hard for them to be generous. You know, it's something that comes to them naturally. And they've always been like that since they were a small child, and they grew up like that. They've met, even as a small baby, they didn't find it hard to share their toys, and and then they grew up like that. And then there are things that are not easy for us, and we have to work on them and develop them. And from this is the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, إِنَّمَا الْحِلْمُ بِالتَّحَلُّمِ وَإِنَّمَا الْعِلْمُ بِالتَّعَلُّمِ. That hilm, and we're going to talk about hilm later on, we just briefly translate as forbearance. It comes with training yourself to be like that. It doesn't come like you just born like that. It comes when you train yourself to handle. You keep trying and training yourself to be that way. And knowledge comes when you train yourself to get it. You go out and you seek that knowledge, you learn. So we sometimes translate the hadith that forbearance comes from practicing it, and knowledge comes from learning it. When you have to practice it, you have to try. So this is also a very important part of akhlaq. The third point that we should make before we start the topic at hand is we should also say that for every praiseworthy characteristic there is an opposite negative one. So everything positive you can talk about, you can also talk about the negative as well. And we should also say that akhlaq is something which is relatively easy to perfect, or to, not to perfect, but easy to improve. You can get a huge amount of benefit and a huge amount of reward and a huge increase in your iman just through changing a few small character traits. It doesn't require you to stand and pray for 3 hours every night. It doesn't require you to fast all day, every day of the year. It only requires you to make some small changes to yourself and the way that you carry yourself and the way that you present yourself, the way that you deal with people. Those few small changes can have the same kind of effect as praying in the night and fasting in the day, as we heard in the hadith. Now that doesn't mean that we don't pray in the night and fast in the day, because Islam is not about doing one thing. But if Allah has made it easy for you to do something, then take advantage from what Allah has made it easy for you to do. And there's no doubt that when you try to improve your character and perfect your character, it brings you benefits which are dunyawiyya and ukhrawiyya. It brings you worldly benefits, and it brings you benefits as it relates to the hereafter. The hereafter we've spoken about, the weight on the scales and the entering of Jannah and the complete Iman and so on and so forth. But don't forget that it brings you dunya benefits as well. It brings you benefits in this worldly life. It brings you benefits in this worldly life. And from the benefits that it brings you in this worldly life is that it improves your relationship with other people, and it makes you a person who other people get on with. It's very, very, very easy to have a good relationship with someone who they themselves have good character. And it's very, very hard to have a good relationship with someone who has bad character, even if that person is very important to you. Even if that person is, for example, a spouse or a parent or a child or a boss or a colleague at work. It's very, very difficult to maintain good relationships with people without good character. But when you have good character, it also changes the way people behave towards you. And generally, it's also, as we hear that in the ayah, وَلَا تَسْتَوِي الْحَسَنَةُ وَلَا السَّيِّئَةُ ادْفَعْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ فَإِذَا الَّذِي بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَهُ عَدَاوَةٌ كَأَنَّهُ وَلِيٌّ حَمِيمٌ وَمَا يُلَقَّاهَا إِلَّا الَّذِينَ صَبَرُوا وَمَا يُلَقَّاهَا إِلَّا ذُو حَظٍّ عَظِيمٍ. Allah Azza wa Jal said, the translation of which is, the good deed and the bad deed are not equal. Respond in a way that is best. When you do this, the one that there was enmity between you and them will become like the closest friend. Now this is what I wanted from the ayah. Notice how the person who behaves with good manners and good character towards someone else, what happens to them? The person who was their enemy starts becoming their friend. Even the one who has terrible manners and treats people terribly starts to behave well towards them because of the good manners and the good character that that person has. And the topic of character is a big one. Right here I have an encyclopedia of the character of a Muslim, and I haven't counted, but I think there must be in excess of 40 individual character traits that are mentioned in this encyclopedia, and I do not say this even comprehensive, and it is only one attempt to gather together the aspects of a Muslim's character. We were told about the Prophet ﷺ, وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. You have the best standard, you are on the best standard of character. And there's no doubt that that was a major reason why the message of Islam spread all over the world. Because of the character of the Prophet ﷺ, and because of the character of those people who took the message from him and spread it on. From this is the ayah in Surah Al Imran, in which Allah Azza wa Jal said, فَبِمَا رَحْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ لِنْتَ لَهُمْ وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَضًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. it was by the mercy of Allah that you were gentle with them, that you, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, were gentle with the people around you. And if you were harsh and hard-hearted, they would have ran from around you. Now I want you to bear something in mind. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he came with Deenul Haqq, the religion of truth. هو الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله. He is the one who sent his messenger with guidance and the religion of truth. The messenger came with the truth. But Allah tells him that if you didn't have good character with your companions, they would not have taken the truth from you. And that is something profound to think about. That you might have the truth with you, and you may say the truth, but that truth may not be accepted from you because of the way that you say and the way that you behave towards other people. And likewise, a person may have falsehood with them, and they may be peddling and promoting falsehood, and that person may be able to promote their falsehood through the character and the way they behave towards people. So there is no doubt that part of, or one of the most important parts of the message of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and one of the most important reasons why that message was accepted by Allah, by the people from Allah Azza wa Jal, is the good character that it came with. So I want to select a few. I want to select certain aspects of the character of a Muslim. I'm not going to select all of them, but I'm just going to choose some that I think are particularly important for us, or maybe often forgotten. So I'm going to begin with one of the most comprehensive. And it's not only a trait of character, it's also a trait of our worship, and it's also a trait of our religion in general. And that is something that the scholars, they call it al-wasatiyya. Based on the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. Like this, we have made you a nation which is in the middle. Wasatiyya literally means to be in the middle. That's the literal meaning of the word. It means to be in the middle. But here, it has two main meanings as it relates to the character of the Muslim. The first one is being in the middle in the sense of not being away from extremes. And you can be extreme on one of two sides. You can be extremely negligent, or you can be extreme in the sense of going beyond what it is that you were told to do. And often in this day and age we focus on the second one, but we don't focus on the first one. So we talk about extremism as being going beyond what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded you to do. And sadly today, unfortunately, sometimes it becomes the case that practicing Islam gets labeled as being extreme. But the reality is, Islam is the least extreme thing in this entire world. Because Islam, everything about it is wasat, is in the middle. It has no extremes in any way. So when we go too far, we go beyond what Allah commanded us to do, this is extreme. And the example of that are those three companions they came to one of the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, and they asked about how he used to be. And when they heard how he used to be, what happened? They decided to go beyond that, to go beyond how he used to be and to go past what he used to do. So one of them said, I am going to pray all night and I'm not going to sleep. And the other one, he said, I'm going to fast every day of the year and I'm never going to break my fast. And the third of them said, I'm never going to marry. When the Prophet ﷺ heard of this, he got upset, he got angry with them. He said, I pray and I sleep. Meaning some of the night I pray and some of the night I go to sleep. And some days I fast and some days I don't fast. And I marry women. فَمَنْ رَغِبَ عَنْ سُنَّتِي فَلَيْسَ مِنِّي. Whoever wants something other than my sunnah is not one of me. That is an example of extremism, if you like, going beyond what Islam allows. But likewise, the other side is also extreme. When you're very negligent and you don't do what Allah commanded you to do, this is another kind of extreme. And that is why our religion, all of it is wasati. All of it is in the middle, moderate. And we don't mean moderate as in just a little bit of Islam. Like that's why when we say moderate to people, they understand moderate means just a drop of Islam. But moderate in the sense of neither being over the limits nor falling short. Not having ifrat and not having tafrid. Not being extreme on either side. And this is a part of our whole religion. For example, I'll just give you an example. La ilaha illallah is wasatiyah. La ilaha illallah is made up of two things. You negate two extremes. When you say La ilaha illallah, you negate atheism and polytheism. Atheism is the rejection of any God. And polytheism is the worship of more than one God. La ilaha illallah is wasat. It's not atheism and it's not polytheism. You reject the worship of other things besides Allah, but you worship Allah Azza wa Jal alone. So our whole religion is about being in the middle. But what I wanted to point out here is how our manners are in the middle as well. Our character is also balanced. And there are aspects of the character that are strong. Like we talk about things like bravery and chivalry and strength and might, having a strong character and leadership and so on. And at the same time we talk about gentleness and we talk about softness and mercy and pardoning and so on. So we find that the traits of a Muslim's character are balanced. It's not the case that everything in our character is about softness to the extent that we lose our honor and our dignity. Because that can happen. You can take softness to an extreme. You can take softness to such an extreme like the Christians did, where they tell you that if someone slaps you on the face, you should give them the other cheek and say to them, slap me here. That in itself is not an Islamic concept. In Islam, we begin with softness, and softness is more beautiful than harshness. And we're going to talk about ar-rifq in a moment, inshaAllah ta'ala. But there's no doubt that we have to have a balance there. And that is why if you look at the names of Allah Azza wa Jalla and His attributes, you find the perfect balance. Have you ever noticed how many times Allah says in the Quran, Azizun Hakim? Azizun Hakim. So many times it comes in the Quran. وَهُوَ الْعَزِيزُ الْحَكِيمُ إِنَّ اللَّهَ عَزِيزٌ حَكِيمٌ. Aziz comes from Izzah. Izzah is about might and honor and power and dominance. And Hakim, it comes from al-hikmah or it comes from al-hukm. Both the scholars say it comes from both. But we'll take from al-hikmah for now. Hikmah is, wisdom and forbearance and gentleness and so on. Why did Allah Azza wa Jal bring these two names together? He brought these two names together to show us that His Izzah is not without hikmah. And His hikmah is not without Izzah. So His strength and power and might is not without wisdom. Have you ever heard the expression like a bull in a china shop? A bull in a china shop, this is Izzah with no hikmah. A bull in a china shop, you put a bull in a shop with all the precious plates and glasses and bowls, and you see what will happen. Everything gets smashed. The bull is very powerful. It's mighty. It's very strong. But it has no hikmah. It doesn't know how to direct that might in the right way. Likewise, you can have hikmah without izzah. where a person has wisdom, they're very wise, but they're very weak. You know, like you imagine the old man. You know, like they always show this image of an old man. You know, you have to travel up a mountain, and he sits there and he's very, very old and very weak. And you know, you ask him a question and he takes a long, long time to reply, but very, very wise. Very wise, but very, very weak. When Allah said Azizun Hakim, He's telling you that His Izzah is with perfect hikmah. His might has perfect wisdom, meaning every single use of that might and every single use of that power is perfectly wise. And His wisdom is infinitely powerful. So every time Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows His wisdom among His creation, it's not because of a lack of power or a lack of strength. The two go together. And that's how it applies to Allah Azza wa Jalla. But there's no doubt that we as Muslims are encouraged to try to develop a balance in our character. And often what we see is where we sometimes go wrong with our character is when we lack a balance and we lack a moderate middle ground in our character. So we give emphasis to some things over others without getting the whole picture. So it's very important for us as Muslims, when we talk about having good character, that we develop the whole picture and we don't just develop one or two aspects and then become lopsided, where we have some things but we don't have others. Two characteristics that I wanted to talk about, and there are so many we could talk about. We talked about hikmah just now. Let's talk about hikmah briefly. Hikmah is often misunderstood. And the reason hikmah or wisdom is often misunderstood is because people associate wisdom with softness only. They associate wisdom as being soft. And in reality, that's not the meaning of the word hikmah. That's not the meaning of the word hikmah, not even in the Arabic language. Because hikmah also from the same word, and that is why when the scholars talk about al-Hakim, they talk about Allah's hikmah and Allah's hukm. And the hukm is not something soft. Hukm is something rough and tough. You know, you made a decision. You made a qarar. You have made a judgment and a ruling and implemented it. So what is hikmah then if it's not softness? Hikmah is to know when to be soft and when to be firm. When to speak and when to be silent. When to act and when to refrain from acting. Hikmah is to know when to apply each of these characteristics. And that's why hikmah is a comprehensive aspect of a Muslim's personality. It's not a small thing, it's a very wide-ranging thing. Because hikmah is the tool that tells you when to deploy one aspect over the other or when to lean towards. But it's not the case that you're either soft or harsh. Right? It's a spectrum, a long spectrum with a lot of space in the middle. So generally as a Muslim, we try to be soft and gentle and merciful. Hikmah is the tool which tells you when you need to adjust yourself slightly in a particular situation. Hikmah is what tells you when you need to speak out and when you need to be silent. And that doesn't mean that the two are equally weighted. Because even in terms of speech and silence, silence is always preferred over speech as a general starting point. As a general starting point, meaning to begin with in the initial stages. Before you know the situation and before you find out, silence is better than speaking. As that famous narration that is always passed around from Umar ibn Khattab, that as for my silence, I've never regretted it once, and as for my speech, I've regretted it many times. That's not absolute also. That can't be absolute, because there are things like al-amr bil-ma'ruf and nahy anil munkar, where you are compelled, religiously obliged to speak out. But in general, when you start with a situation, is it better for you to stay silent until you understand it, or it's better for you to speak out? No doubt, the basic position is remain silent until you know that it's the time to speak. Likewise, the basic position is to be gentle until you know it's the time to be harsh. But the more you develop the wisdom and the hikmah as a characteristic and a trait of your character, the quicker you appraise a situation and the quicker you know what the right thing to do in that situation is. That's what hikmah is. It's knowing the right thing to do in any given situation. And that's why Allah Azza wa Jalla said, وَمَنْ يُؤْتَ الْحِكْمَةَ فَقَدْ أُوتِيَ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. Whoever has been given wisdom has been given a great deal of good. It's a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to know what the right action or the right behavior for any given situation is. And there's no doubt that just like we're going to talk about hilm and tahallum, no doubt hikmah also comes from life experiences and from learning. It comes from really two things. And if you want, you can say three. Number one, it comes from learning Islamic knowledge. Because Islam gives you the knowledge, Allah Azza wa Jal through the Sharia gives you the knowledge of when to do this and when to do that. And you observe how the Prophet ﷺ behaved in certain situations, and from that you learn and you develop wisdom. The second thing it comes from experience. And that's why generally, those people who are a little bit older, generally wisdom is something associated with age, in general. Not always the case, because there are foolish people who are old and there are wise people who are young. But in general, it's associated with age. Like the longer you have, the more experiences and the more varied your experiences are, the more you develop an understanding of how to behave in certain situations. And if you want to add a third, you can say the third is what is given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without your effort. And what is a blessing from Allah Azza wa Jal, that He gives you from ilham, from inspiration, that He inspires you to behave in the right situation, in the right way. From there, we're going to talk about another attribute of the Muslim character, and that is, or two attributes. And this has a little bit of a story. These two attributes, they have a story, and the story is the story of the Wafd of Abdul Qais. You know, a Wafd is a delegation, right? You can say like a formal delegation. A group of people who come on behalf of a tribe, or on behalf of a country, or on behalf of a city, or whatever, and they represent them they go to a ruler or a dignitary, and they represent them on behalf of their people. There was a delegation that came to the Prophet ﷺ called Wafd Abdul Qais, the delegation of Abdul Qais. And they were from a tribe that did not have easy access to Medina, because between them and between Medina was a tribe called Mudar. And the tribe of Mudar, they were a warring tribe, and they were not Muslim. And they used to have constant war, constant state of war. So they came to the Prophet ﷺ and they said that we can only come to you in the Ashur al-Hurum. We can only come to you in the sacred months, because the time that when it's outside of the sacred months, this tribe will just, they just kill everybody in their path. So they said to the Prophet ﷺ, teach us something comprehensive, which we can teach to those behind us that we left behind from our tribe, and we can enter Jannah by it. This, by the way, is the perfect intention for seeking knowledge. And that's why they asked Imam Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala, what's the perfect intention for seeking knowledge? And Imam Ahmad said, أَن تَنْوِيَ رَفْعَ جَهْلٍ عَنْ نَفْسِكَ وَعَنْ غَيْرِكَ. That you intend to remove the ignorance that is within you and within other people. Anyone who learns in order to remove ignorance from other people, that will not be successful. Likewise, the one who learns and their only intention is to remove ignorance from themselves will also not be truly successful. You'll only be successful when your intention is first of all to get rid of the ignorance within you, and then to share that with other people to help them to get rid of the ignorance that exists within them. And that was their intention. They said, teach us something comprehensive. We can teach to the people who we left behind, and we can enter Jannah by it. It will benefit us as individuals, and it will also allow us to convey to the people who we left behind. In any case, the leader of Abdul Qais, and if I'm not mistaken, his name was Al-Ashaj. The Prophet ﷺ, he said to him, إِنَّ فِيكَ خِصْلَتَيْنِ يُحِبُّهُمُ اللَّهُ الْحِلْمُ, or he said Al-Hilm wal-Ana. He said, you have two attributes of your character that Allah loves. Al-Hilm wal-Ana. Al-Hilm and Al-Ana. These are two really beautiful aspects of the character that we don't often think about. So what is Al-Hilm? Al-Hilm, in reality, one of the most important aspects of it is that you have the ability to react and to take revenge and to punish and to lash out, and you don't do it. Instead, you give chances and you let things go, and you put up with harm to yourself and difficulty to yourself, and you're not one who's quick to lash out. That is the meaning of Al-Hilm. And from the names of Allah Azza wa Jal is Al-Halim. And that's because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is no one who has more hilm than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The first sin you did, Allah Azza wa Jal, from His right, is to put you into Jahannam khalidina fiha, forever. From the first sin that you did. But Allah Azza wa Jal gave you a chance. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees these people living the life that they live, disbelieving in Him, doing all kinds of haram and all kinds of jurm, all kinds of criminality and all kinds of evil. And still Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't make the earth swallow them up and doesn't send stones down upon them from the sky. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala leaves them for a time to see, so that the people can see the justice of Allah Azza wa Jalla. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Halim, and Allah loves for you to be Halim. And that means that you don't lash out. People harm you all the time. People harm you, just drive down the road. You can't drive from one end of the street to the other without somebody harming you. People harm you in many different ways. The one who is Halim is the one who doesn't let that harm get to them. They don't let that, they don't become bitter, and they don't start harming other people because people harm them. And they're not the one that lashes out. The first time somebody pokes them, that their reaction is what? Just lash out. They're not the one who lashes out. They put up with difficulties that come to them from other people, and they're not a one to take revenge despite having the ability. And that's why you don't really use the word Halim for the one who doesn't have ability. You know, the one who doesn't have the ability to lash out and doesn't have the ability to do anything. This person, you call them da'if. You don't call them Halim. The one who is Halim is the one who, they have the ability to do something, but they refrain. They're a person who has caution, a person who is careful, a person who is thoughtful before they act. And that brings us to the second characteristic, which is Al-Ana. And Al-Ana, sometimes we call it At-Ta'anni, taking things slowly and giving things consideration. Allah Azza wa Jalla loves, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves for you to give things consideration in your speech, in your action, to slow things down. That doesn't mean you don't take an opportunity when it comes. When opportunity comes, you can seize the opportunity. But it means that in general, you're a person who is not on rapid fire mode. You're not a person who every single thing, you're not reactive. You know, like there are some elements and chemicals, they're reactive. Anytime you put them next to anything, they just explode. The person who has ta'anni or ana is the one who thinks about things and considers things before they take an action and before they say something. How many people got themselves into the biggest of problems because of a word they said that if they had just taken 10 seconds to think about it before it came out of their mouth, they would have been in a much better situation. But instead, what did they do? It just came out quickly. It was rapid and it was not given proper care and thought. And so it came out and then it harmed them. The whole rest of their life they're trying to clean up for that word that they said. That just came out like that without proper care and consideration. The person who just takes time, someone comes to him and says, what should we do about this situation? It's an emergency, we need to act right now. And this person doesn't take a week to give you an answer. But they take a few seconds to just give it consideration. And they don't act upon emotion. Because the one who is halim, the one who has a ta'anni or al-ana, this is a person who they don't act on emotion. They're not on that emotional trigger that every time something upsets them, that's it, they start. A person who is slow to react and calm and considerate. But like we said, please bear in mind what we said about al-wasatiyya. You can take this to an extreme where it's not praiseworthy. Where there's something beneficial in front of you, you don't do it because you're thinking about it. Like the person who says, I've been thinking about converting to Islam for the last 2 years. This is not praiseworthy ta'anni. This is a ta'anni al-madhmoom. This is blameworthy consideration. That you had an opportunity to become Muslim, still 2 years later you're thinking, shall I become Muslim or shall I not become Muslim? This becomes like unnecessary dawdling. And it's not careful consideration. Careful consideration, you think about it, then you take the opportunity. Dawdling is a kind of laziness, where you're too lazy to be able to decide what it is that you want to do, or indecisiveness. So like everything, there is a balance in those things. One more characteristic that I wanted to talk to you about is al-rifq. And rifq is gentleness, and it also means ease, and it also means taking things in stages, at-tadarruj. The Prophet ﷺ, he told Aisha, and the story is well known, that a group of the Jews passed by the Prophet ﷺ and they said, Assalamu alaikum, without the lam. Assam here means al-maut. Yani death be upon you, may you die. When Aisha heard this, she got upset. She said, Assalamu alaikum wa la'natullah. She said, may death be upon you and the curse of Allah. Or she said, alaykum as-samu wa la'na. May death and curses be upon you. The Prophet ﷺ said, Ya Aisha. He said, Oh Aisha, Inna Allah rafiqun yuhibbu rifq. Allah is rafiq. Allah is extremely gentle. And Allah loves gentleness. She said, O Messenger of Allah, did you not hear what they said to you? He said, I said to them, wa alaykum. Whatever you said to me, may that be upon you. Whatever you said to me, be it upon you. Without the anger, without the harshness, the gentleness. In another wording, the Prophet ﷺ said, Inna Allah yu'ti alayhi, ala rifq. Allah gives for mercy, or gives for gentleness, ma la yu'ti ala unf. Allah gives for gentleness what He doesn't give for harshness. And when it says yu'ti here, it doesn't mean necessarily reward, but in everything, and you get better results when you're gentle than you do when you're harsh. You get better results when you are gentle than you do when you're harsh. And Allah Azza wa Jal is gentle in all of the aspects of rifq. So from the aspects of rifq, we said is tadarruj, taking things in steps. So from this is that Allah Azza wa Jal created His creation in stages. You don't see that Allah Azza wa Jal created everything in one go. The heavens and the earth and the jinn and the mankind and the angels, and then sent the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and revealed the Quran all in 1 minute. Instead, Allah Azza wa Jal created the heavens, created the earth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the creation in stages. This is from the rifq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And from the rifq of Allah Azza wa Jal is the ease of His sharia. That His sharia is very, very easy. And it's very gentle on people. It's not hard on people. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. Allah doesn't burden a person beyond their scope. And so there is no doubt that we need to develop gentleness in the way that we deal with people. And again, see that in the light of wasatiyya, which means that you can take gentleness to an extreme where it becomes blameworthy. But gentleness should be our default position. We're gentle with people, and we're generally soft and easygoing with people. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Shall I not inform you of the one that the hellfire is forbidden for him and he is forbidden for the hellfire?" They said, "Yes, O Messenger of Allah." He said, "The hellfire is forbidden for everyone who is hayyin and layyin and sahl and qareeb." Everyone who is soft and gentle and easygoing and approachable. Everyone who is soft and gentle and easygoing and approachable. So the one who is soft and gentle and easygoing, you make things easy for people. How many times people make it unnecessarily hard for people? You know, you see it in jobs all the time, you see it in offices all the time. When you go for something you need, and somebody just makes your life difficult, you know, like for no other reason. This person is not the people who the hellfire is prohibited for them and they are prohibited for it. A person who is sahl, a person who is samh, they are easygoing and considerate of other people. Even in things where people are not normally considerate. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Rahim Allahu rajulan samhan idha ba'a, samhan idha ishtara, samhan idha qada, samhan idha iqtada." May Allah have mercy on a man who is easygoing and considerate when he buys and when he sells, or when he sells and when he buys, and when he demands his rights and when he gives others their rights. It's easygoing, it's not difficult for people. It's considerate, it's samh. It's very easygoing, considers other people's needs, and he thinks about other people. And the person who is qareeb, they're approachable. They're approachable. Somebody who's approachable. They're not a person who is in an ivory tower. Sometimes you know, you don't have to live in a palace. Some people build one for themselves. In the sense that they are, you can't approach them, you can't connect with them, you can't ask them, you can't talk to them, you can't have a conversation with them. They're like, what's the example? Like in the example of the 11 women who complained about their husband. Like the example of the lean camel on the top of the tall mountain. على جبل واعر, يعني the camel that has no meat on it. She gave an example of her husband. She said, "My husband is like the lean camel on top of the extremely high mountain. If you bother to climb the mountain, you don't find any meat. And if you know, like when you look at the mountain, it's a big thing to climb. Like that's how hard he is to approach. He's so hard to approach that I feel like I'm climbing Mount Everest just to get there. And when I get to the top, there's no meat on the camel anyway. There was no point in me even going." So that's also something that you have to be. You have to be someone who is qareeb. And that's how the Prophet ﷺ used to be with his companions. He used to sit with them, he used to share in their worries, he used to laugh with them, he used to joke with them, within the limits of the Sharia. He was near to his companions. He wasn't somebody far away from his companions. There are so many others that I wanted to talk about, but I'm going to conclude with a series, because I think this is extremely important and something that I believe that we are often missing, which is that we give a lot of emphasis to the characteristics that relate to softness, forgiveness, pardoning, mercy, gentleness, being approachable and easygoing and soft and gentle and all of those things. But I also think that there are some characteristics which broadly, very broadly, we can gather them together and call them, I don't know, maybe it's a wrong term because when I say this term, it sounds like it excludes the women, but they call it rujula, like manlyhood or manliness. This doesn't exclude the sisters, by the way, but it's just that there are some characteristics which they are not harsh and hard, but they provide a balance to those other characteristics. So from them is the characteristic of having independent thought, of honor, of chivalry. And interestingly enough, chivalry is something, if you look it up in the dictionary, chivalry is effectively the attributes of a warrior. The attributes of a warrior. They call it the attributes of a knight, but we don't have knights in Islam. The attributes of a warrior. If you think about the Sahaba, and you think about the warriors among them, Umar ibn Khattab, Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib, Khalid ibn al-Walid, radiyallahu anhu, what do you think about their character? How do you see their character? I'm not talking about strength. I'm talking about their character. How was it? That independence of thought, the honor, the chivalry, the dignity, the strength of character, the bravery, the courage, even the hayba, you know, like having a hayba and having a presence, that when Umar walked into the room, everybody became silent. Everybody turned around. Having a presence, being determined, being mature, having the attributes of leadership, self-control. These are all aspects which come under this topic of, maybe you can call it, if you want to call it chivalry, you can call it chivalry, or you can call it manlyhood, or any of these other things, you could name it. But these things that we are missing in this day and age, and I think we're missing it for a number of reasons. We're sometimes missing it because our lives today are so easy. Our lives today are so easy compared to how they used to be. You know, you imagine that people used to send their small children to the desert to live with the Bedouins in order to become, strong and to become tough and so on. When in reality now, we live our lives wrapped up in cotton wool. But also because these things are passed on from the parents to the children, and it's very hard, and when they start to disappear among the generations, the next generation that comes is worse, because you don't learn that from school. You don't go to school and learn, dignity and bravery and courage and presence and determination and maturity and leadership. You don't really learn that in school. This is something you learn from those people who are these huge figures in society, leaders, people who have a presence, who have, that. And even things like honor and treatment of the guest. Where do children learn how to treat their guests? That things like al-karam, generosity and things like that. This is something that you don't learn it from sitting in a classroom with 30 other kids. You learn it from accompanying your parents and from seeing how they behave and accompanying the people of honor and dignity in the society and seeing how they behave and implementing those characteristics within yourself. And like we said, many of those characteristics, if not all of them, to a certain extent, apply towards women as well, each in the aspect that in the way that Islam applies it. So this is something that I just wanted to select a few of these characteristics. For those people who want to look into this a little bit further, there's a very, very nice mawsu'a, a nice encyclopedia of akhlaq. It is in Arabic only. I haven't found it in English yet. Although I did think about taking some time out to translate it, it's really well worth translating. It's on the website Ad-Durar As-Saniyya, and it's called Mawsu'atul Akhlaq. So I find this to be it's very beautiful. And they break down each of them and they give a definition and examples and ahadith and ayat, and then they break it down into stories and people, and so it's very, very, very well written. Like we said, it's on the website Ad-Durar As-Siriyya, and it's called Mawsu'at al-Akhlaq, the Encyclopedia of Manners. So for those who can understand Arabic, it might be worth you going through those as well, inshallah ta'ala. As for those who want something to access in English, then definitely looking in two places. Number one, in the books that relate to things like manners, like Riyadh al-Salihin by Imam al-Nawawi, rahimahullah ta'ala, have things relating to manners, chapters relating to manners and etiquette in them. And in reading the siyar, the biographies of the righteous people, because this is when you really learn what character is. You can't learn a character just dry like that, but when you read the siyar, the biographies of people, you read the biography of the prophets and the messengers, and our messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you read the biographies of the great scholars of Islam, the companions of the great figures in Islamic history. These characteristics come to light. They come to light. You actually really understand what chivalry means, and honor means, and shyness means, and mercy means, and so on. When you read these biographies, and they inspire you to be a better person, and they actually develop those character traits within yourself. So it's something very, very important, something we have to keep coming back to. I don't think it's something that you can just learn one time and then put it on the shelf, because that doesn't go with the hadith, إِنَّمَا الْعِلْمُ بِالتَّعَلُّمُ وَإِنَّمَا الْحِلْمُ بِالتَّحَلُّمُ. And you have to develop it. So that means you have to keep coming back to it again and again, studying it and trying to improve yourself, taking it from the Quran, from the Sunnah, and likewise taking it from the biographies and the examples of the righteous. There is one more attribute that I didn't talk about, but wallahi, I really wanted to touch upon it briefly, which is the characteristic of al-haya. Haya, we sometimes call it modesty, but the scholars have a very beautiful definition of haya. They say that haya is a characteristic of a person that stops them doing something that would lower their status in the sight of Allah or in the sight of the people. That's what haya is, modesty. It's a characteristic that stops a person from doing something that would lower them in the sight of Allah, i.e. between you and Allah or between you and the people. And what is between you and Allah, that's what we refer to as a deen, a religion. And what's between you and the people, we refer to it as al-ird, your honor or your reputation, your dignity. And haya covers both. It's a characteristic that prevents you, stops you from doing something which would lower you in the sight of Allah. It would lower your iman, it would harm your religion, or it would harm your dignity and your honor, your reputation, your respect in the eyes of the people. And this is again a quality that we rarely see implemented as it should be today. We either see people only concerned about their reputation in the eyes of the people. So when they go home at night and they lock the door, they do any kind of haram they want, because they're only interested in what is between them and the people. And sometimes you see the other way around. But rarely do you see that balance. And if you don't have that attribute of haya, the problem is that you'll do anything you want. Because the Prophet ﷺ, he said, مِمَّا أَدْرَكَ النَّاسِ مِنْ كَلَامِ النُّبُوَّةِ الْأُولَى إِذَا لَمْ تَسْتَحِي فَاصْنَعْ مَا شِئْتَ. From that which the people took from the speech of the earlier prophets, if you don't have shame, do whatever you want. Meaning that if you don't have any shyness and you don't have something that stops you doing those things, you would do whatever. There will be nothing, no limit for you as to what you would do. There'll be nowhere you'll stop. You'll never ever stop. There'll never ever be a limit where you will draw the line if you don't have that quality within you. And again, these qualities come from learning the Quran and the Sunnah, from trying to implement them, and likewise from reading about those people who did that. So that is where we're going to stop there, inshaAllah ta'ala. If anyone has any questions on this topic of aspects of the character of a Muslim, we call it aspects because it's not everything about the character of a Muslim, but just some parts of it. Some parts of it, inshaAllah ta'ala. Then if anyone has any points they would like to make, they're more than welcome, inshaAllah.